Part 6, Unwound. For your ease and peace of mind, there are a variety of harvest camps to choose from. Each facility is privately owned, state licensed, and federally funded by your tax dollars. Regardless of the site you choose, you can feel confident that your Unwind will receive the finest possible care from our board-certified staff as they make their transition to a divided state. From the Parents' Unwinding Handbook. Chapter 51, Camp. On the existence of a soul, whether unwound or unborn, people are likely to debate for hours on end. But no one questions whether an unwinding facility has a soul. It does not. Perhaps that's why those who build these massive medical factories try so hard to make them kid-conscious and user-friendly in a number of ways. First of all, they are no longer called unwinding facilities as they were when they were first conceived. They are now called harvest camps. Secondly, every single one of them is located in a spectacularly scenic location, perhaps to remind its guests of the big picture and the reassuring majesty of a larger plan. Third, the grounds are well maintained as a resort, filled with bright pastel colors and as little red as possible, since red is psychologically associated with anger, aggression, and, not coincidentally, blood. Happy Jack Harvest Camp in beautiful Happy Jack, Arizona, is the perfect model of what a harvest camp should be. Nestled on a pine-covered ridge in northern Arizona, the sedating forest views give way to the breathtaking red mountains of Sedona to the west. No doubt it was the view that made happy men of the 20th century lumberjacks who founded the town, hence the name. The boys' dormitory is painted light blue with green accents. The girls is lavender with pink. The staff have uniforms that consist of comfortable shorts and Hawaiian shirts. Except for the surgeons in the medical unit, their scrubs are sunshine yellow. There's a barbed wire fence, but it's hidden behind a towering hibiscus hedge, and although the unwinds and the residents see the crowded buses arrive at the front gate each day, they are spared the sight of the departing trucks. Those leave the back way. The average stay for an unwind is 3 weeks, although it varies depending on blood type and supply and demand. Much like life in the outside world, no one knows when it's their time. Occasionally, in spite of the professional and positive attitude of the staff, outbursts do occur. This week's rebellion is in the form of graffiti on the side of the medical clinic that reads, "You're not fooling anyone." On the 4th of February, 3 kids arrived by police escort. 2 were brought unceremoniously into the Welcome Center, just like any other arriving unwind. The third is singled out to take the longer route that passes by the dormitories, the sports fields, and the various places where unwinds are gathered. Hobbled by leg shackles, constricted by handcuffs, Connor's strides are short, his posture hunched. Armed juvie cops are on either side, in front of and behind him. All things at Happy Jack are serene and gracious, but this moment is the exception to the rule. Once in a while, a particularly troublesome unwind is singled out and publicly humiliated for all to see before being set loose into the general population. Invariably, that unwind will try to rebel, and invariably, that unwind will be taken to the clinic and unwound within just a few days of his or her arrival. It stands as an unspoken warning to every unwind there. You will get with the program, or your stay here will be very, very short. The lesson is always learned. However, this time, what the Happy Jack staff doesn't know is that Connor Lassiter's reputation has preceded him. The staff's own announcement that they've taken down the Acronet wall doesn't deflate the spirits of the unwinds there. Instead, it takes a boy who is only a rumor and turns him into a legend. Chapter 52, Risa. Before we begin our session, I feel it's important to remind you that although you've developed a friendship with the so-called Acronet wall, it's in your best interest to disassociate yourself from him. The first thing they did was to separate the 3 of them. Divide and conquer, isn't that the term? Risa has no problem being separated from Roland, but seeing what they did to Connor makes her long to see him even more. Physically, he wasn't harmed in any way. It would not do to damage the merchandise. Psychologically, however, that's a different story. They paraded him through the grounds for nearly 20 minutes. Then they took off his shackles and just left him there by the flagpole. No trip to the Welcome Center, no orientation, nothing. He was left to figure everything out for himself. Risa knew the point wasn't to challenge him or even punish him. It was to give him every opportunity to do the wrong thing. That way, they could justify any punishment they gave. It had worried Risa, but only for a moment, because she knows Connor all too well. He will only do the wrong thing when it's the right thing to do. It looks like you did very well in the aptitude test, Risa. Above average, actually. Good for you. After being there half a day, Risa is still shell-shocked by the general appearance of Happy Jack Harvest Camp. In her mind's eye, she always pictured harvest camps as human cattle stockades, dead-eyed crowds of malnourished kids in small gray cells, a nightmare of dehumanization. Yet somehow this picturesque nightmare is worse. Just as the airplane graveyard was heaven disguised as hell, harvest camp is hell masquerading as heaven. You seem to be in good physical condition. You've been getting lots of exercise, yes? Running, perhaps? Exercise seems to be a principal component of the Unwind's day. At first, she assumed the various activities were designed to keep the Unwinds occupied until their number came up. Then, as she passed a basketball game on the way to the Welcome Center, she noticed a totem pole by the court. In the eyes of each 5 totems were cameras, 10 players, 10 cameras. It meant that someone somewhere was studying each of the Unwinds in the game, taking notes on eye-hand coordination, gauging the strengths of the various muscle groups. Risa had quickly realized that the basketball game wasn't to keep the Unwinds entertained, but to help put a cash value on their parts. Over the next few weeks, you'll be involved in a program of diverse activities. Risa, dear, are you listening? Is any of this going over your head? Would you like me to slow down? The harvest counselor who interviews her seems to assume that, in spite of aptitude scores, every Unwind must be an imbecile. The woman wears a pink floral blouse with lots of leaves and pink flowers. Risa wishes she could attack her with a weed whacker. Do you have any questions or concerns, dear? If you do, there's no better time to ask. What happens to the bad parts? The question seems to throw the woman off stride. Excuse me? You know, the bad parts. What do you do with the club feet and deaf ears? Do you use those in transplants? You don't have either of those, do you? No, but I have an appendix. What happens to that? Well, says the counselor with near infinite patience, a deaf ear is better than no ear at all, and sometimes it's all that people can afford. As for your appendix, nobody really needs that anyway. Then aren't you breaking the law? Doesn't the law specifically say that you have to keep 100% of an Unwind alive? The smile has begun to fade from the counselor's face. Well, actually, it's 99.44%, which takes into account things like the appendix. I see. Our next bit of business will be your pre-admission questionnaire. Due to your unorthodox arrival, you never had the opportunity to fill one out. She flips through the pages of the questionnaire. Most of the questions don't matter at this point, but if you have any special skills you'd like us to know about, things that could be of use to the community during your stay here, Risa wishes she could just get up and leave. Even now, at the end of her life, she still has to face the inevitable question, what are you good for? I have some medical experience, Risa tells her flatly. First aid, CPR. The woman smiles apologetically. Well, if there's one thing we have too many of here, it's medical staff. If the woman says, well, one more time, Risa may just drop her down a nice deep one. Anything else? I helped at the infant nursery back at Stay-Ho. Again, that slim smile. Sorry, no babies here. Is that all? Risa sighs. I also studied classical piano. The woman's eyebrows raise about an inch. Really? You play piano? Well, well, well. Chapter 53, Connor. Connor wants to fight. He wants to mistreat the staff and disobey every rule because he knows if he does, it will get this over with faster. But he won't give in to the urge for 2 reasons. 1, it's exactly what they want him to do. And 2, Risa. He knows how it will devastate her to see him led to the chop shop. That's what the kids call it, the chop shop, although they never say it in front of the staff. Connor's a celebrity in his dormitory. He finds it absurd and surreal that kids here see him as some sort of symbol when all he did was survive. It can't be all true, the kid who sleeps in the bed next to his ass the first night. I mean, you didn't really take on an entire squad of juvie cops with their own trank guns. No, it's not true, Connor tells him, but denying it just makes the kid believe it even more. They didn't really shut down an entire freeway looking for you, another kid says. It was just one freeway and they didn't shut it down. I did, sort of, so then it is true. It's no use, no amount of downplaying the story can convince the others that the Akron AWOL is not some larger-than-life action figure. And then there's Roland, who as much as he despises Connor, is now riding Connor's fame wave for all it's worth. Although Roland's in another unit, wild stories are already getting back to Connor about how he and Roland stole a helicopter and liberated 100 Unwinds being held in a Tuscan hospital. Connor considers telling them that all Roland did was turn them in, but decides life is literally too short to start things up with Roland again. There's one kid Connor speaks to who actually listens and can tell the truth from fabrications. His name is Dalton. He's 17, but short and stocky with hair that has a mind of its own. Connor tells him exactly what happened the day he went AWOL. It's a relief to have someone believe the truth. Dalton, however, has his own perspective on it. Even if that's all that happened, Dalton says, it's still pretty impressive. It's what the rest of us wish we could have done. Connor has to admit he's right. You're like king of the unwinds here, Dalton tells him. But guys like you get unwound real quick, so watch yourself. Then Dalton takes a long look at him. You scared, he asks. Connor wishes he could tell him different, but he won't lie. Yeah. He seems almost relieved that Connor's scared too. In group, they tell us the fear will pass and we'll get to a place of acceptance. I've been here almost 6 months, and I'm just as scared as the day I got here. 6 months? I thought everyone goes down in just a few weeks. Dalton leans in close and whispers, as if it's dangerous information. Not if you're in the band. A band. The thought of there being music at a place where lives are silenced doesn't sit well with Connor. They set us up on the roof of the chop shop and have us play while they're bringing kids in, Dalton says. We play everything, classics, pop, old world rock. I'm the best bass player this place has ever seen. And then he grins. You should come listen to us tomorrow. We just got a new keyboard player. She's hot. Volleyball in the morning, Connor's first official activity. Several staffers in their rainbow of flowered shirts stand on the sidelines with clipboards because apparently the volleyball court isn't equipped with 12 individual cameras. From behind them, the roof of the chop shop plays music. Dalton's band. It's their soundtrack for the morning. The opposing team completely deflates when they see Connor, as if the mere presence of him will ensure their loss. Never mind that Connor stinks at volleyball. To them, the Akron AWOL is a star in every sport. Roland's on the opposing team as well. He doesn't wilt like the others. He just glares, holding the volleyball, ready to serve it down Connor's throat. The game begins. The intensity of the play can only be matched by an undercurrent of fear that runs beneath every tap of the ball. Both teams play as if the losers will be immediately unwound. Dalton had told Connor that it doesn't work that way, but losing can't help either. It reminds Connor of the Mayan game of Pocketalk, something they learned about in his history class. The game was a lot like basketball, except the losers were sacrificed to the Mayan gods. At the time, Connor thought it was cool. Roland spikes the ball and hits one of the staffers in the face. Roland grins before he apologizes, and the man glares at him, making a note on his clipboard. Connor wonders if that will cost Roland a few days. Then suddenly the game pauses because everyone's attention begins to shift to a group of kids in white, passing on the far side of the court. Those are ties, the kid tells Connor. You know that, right? Connor nods, I know. Look at them. They think they're so much better than everyone else. Connor's already heard how the tithes are treated differently than the regular population. Tithes and terribles, that's how the staff refers to the two kinds of unwinds. Tithes don't participate in the same activities as the terribles. They don't wear the same blue and pink uniforms the terribles wear. Their white silk outfits are so bright in the Arizona sun, you have to squint your eyes when you look at them like they were adolescent versions of God himself. Although to Connor, they look more like a little squad of aliens. The terribles hate the tithes the way peasants despise royalty. Connor may have felt this same way once, but having known one, he feels more sorry for them than anything else. I hear they know the exact date and time of their unwinding, one kid says. I hear they actually make their own appointment, says another. The ref blows a whistle. All right, back to the game. They turn away from the bright uniforms of the chosen few and add more layers of frustration to the match. For a moment, as the tides disappear over the hillside, Connor thinks he recognizes a face among them, but he knows it's just his imagination. Chapter 54, Lev. It's not Connor's imagination. Levi Jedediah Calder is one of the very special guests of Happy Jack Harvest Camp, and he is wearing his tithing whites once more. He does not see Connor on the volleyball court because the tithes are strictly instructed not to look at the terribles. Why should they? They've been told from birth they are a different caste and have a higher calling. Lev may still have the remnants of a sunburn, but his hair is cut short and neat, just like it used to be, and his manner is sensitive and mild, at least on the outside. He has an appointment for unwinding in 13 days. Chapter 55, Risa. She plays on the roof of the chop shop. Her music carries across the fields to the ears of more than 1,000 souls waiting to go under the knife. The joy of having her fingers on the keys can only be matched by the horror of knowing what's going on beneath her feet. From her vantage point on the roof, she sees, then brought down the maroon flagstone path that all the kids call the red carpet. Kids who walk around the carpet have guards flanking them on either side with firm grips under their arms, firm enough to restrain them, but not enough to bruise them. Yet in spite of this, Dalton and the rest of his band play like it doesn't matter at all. How can you do this, she asked, during one of their breaks. How can you watch them day after day going in and never coming out? You get used to it, the drummer tells her, and takes a swig of his water. You'll see. I won't. I can't. She thinks about Connor. He doesn't have the same reprieve from unwinding. He doesn't stand a chance. I can't be an accomplice to what they're doing. Hey, says Dalton, getting annoyed. This is survival here, and we do what we have to do to survive. You got chosen because you can play, then you're good. Don't throw it away. Either you get used to the kids walking down the red carpet, or you'll be on it yourself, and we'll have to play for you. Risa gets the message, but it doesn't mean she has to like it. Is that what happened to your last keyboard player, Risa asked. She can tell it's a subject they'd rather not think about. They look at one another. No one wants to take the question. Then the lead singer answers with a nonchalant toss of her hair like it doesn't matter. Jack was about to turn 18, so they took him a week before his birthday. He was not a very happy Jack, says the drummer, and hits a rim shot. That's it, says Risa. They just took him. Business is business, says the lead singer. They lose a ton of money if one of us turns 18, because then they've got to let us go. I've got a plan, though, says Dalton, winking at the others who've obviously heard this before. When I'm getting close to 18 and they're ready to come for me, I'm jumping right off this roof. You're going to kill yourself? Oh, I hope not. It's only 2 stories. But I'll sure get busted up real bad. See, they can't unwind you like that. They have to wait until you heal. By then I'll turn 18 and they'll be screwed. He high-fives the drummer and they laugh. Risa can only stare in disbelief. Personally, says the lead singer, I'm counting on them lowering the legal age of adulthood to 17. If they do, I'll go to the staffers and counselors and the friggin' doctors. I'll spit right in their faces and they won't be able to do anything but let me walk right out the gate on my own 2 legs. Then the guitar player, who hasn't said a word all morning, picks up his instrument. This one's for Jack, he says, and begins playing the opening chords to the pre-war classic, Don't Fear the Reaper. The rest of them join in, playing from the heart, and Risa does her best to keep her eyes away from the red carpet. Chapter 56, Connor. The dormitories are divided into units. There are 30 kids per unit, 30 beds in a long, thin room with large, shadow-proof windows to bring in the cheerful light of day. As Connor prepares for dinner, he notices that 2 beds in his unit have been stripped and the kids who slept there are nowhere to be seen. Everyone notices, but no one talks about it except one kid who takes one of the bunks because his mattress has a broken spring. Let a newbie have the broken one, he says. I'm going to be comfortable my last week. Connor can't remember either the names or faces of the missing kids, and it haunts him. The whole day weighs heavily on him, the way kids think he can somehow save them when he knows he can't even save himself. The way the staff keeps waiting for him to make a mistake. His one joy is knowing Risa is safe, at least for now. He had seen her after lunch when he stopped to watch the band. He had been searching for her everywhere, and all that time she was right there in plain view, playing her heart out. She had told him she played piano, but he never gave it much thought. She was amazing, and now he wishes he had taken more time to get to know who she was before she escaped from that bus. When she saw him watching that afternoon, she smiled, something she rarely did. But the smile was quickly replaced by a look that registered the reality. She was up there, and he was down here. Connor spends so much time with his thoughts in the dormitory that when he looks up, he realizes everyone in the unit's already left for dinner. As he gets up to leave, he sees someone lurking at the door and stops short. It's Roland. You're not supposed to be here, Connor says. No, I'm not, says Roland, but thanks to you, I am. That's not what I mean. If you get caught out of your unit, it's a mark against you. They'll unwind you sooner. Nice of you to care. Connor heads for the doorway, but Roland blocks his path. For the first time, Connor notices that in spite of Roland's muscular build, they're not all that different in height. Connor always thought Roland towered over him. He doesn't. Connor prepares himself for whatever Roland might have up his sleeve and says, if you're here for a reason, get it over with. Otherwise, step aside and let me go to dinner. The look on Roland's face is so toxic, it could take out an entire unit. I could have killed you a dozen times. I should have, because then we wouldn't be here. You turned us in at the hospital, Connor reminds him. If you hadn't done that, we wouldn't be here. We would have all made it safely back to the graveyard. What graveyard? There's nothing left. You locked me in that crate and let them destroy it all. I would have stopped it, but you never gave me the chance. If you were there, you would have found a way to kill the Admiral yourself. Hell, you would have killed the Goldens if they weren't already dead. That's what you are. That's who you are. Roland suddenly gets very quiet, and Connor knows he's gone too far. Well, if I'm a killer, I'm running out of time, says Roland. I'd better get to it. He begins swinging, and Connor's quick to defend, but soon it's more than just defending himself. Connor taps into his own wellspring of fury and lets loose a brutal offense of his own. It's the fight they never had in the warehouse. It's the fight Roland wanted when he had cornered Risa in the bathroom. Both of them fuel their fists with a world's worth of anger. They smash against walls and bed frames, relentlessly pummeling each other. Connor knows this is not like any fight he's ever had before, and although Roland doesn't have a weapon, he doesn't need one. He's his own weapon. As well as Connor fights, Roland is simply stronger, and Connor's strength begins to fade. Roland grabs him by the throat and slams him against the wall. His hand presses against Connor's windpipe. Connor struggles, but Roland's grip's way too strong. He slams Connor against the wall over and over, never loosening his grip on his neck. You call me a killer, but you're the only criminal here, screams Roland. I didn't take a hostage, I didn't shoot a juvie cop, and I never killed anyone until now. Then he squeezes his fingers together and shuts off Connor's windpipe completely. Connor's struggles become weaker. Without oxygen to feed his muscles, his chest heaves against the absence of air, and his vision begins to darken until all he can see is Roland's furious grimace. Would you rather die or be unwound? Now he finally knows the answer. Maybe this is what he wanted. Maybe it's why he stood there and taunted Roland, because he'd rather be killed with a furious hand than dismembered with cool indifference. Connor's eyesight fills with frantic squiggles, and the darkness closes in. His consciousness fails, but only for an instant, because in a moment his head hits the ground, startling him to conscious again. And when his vision starts to clear, he sees Roland looking down at him. He's just standing there staring. To Connor's amazement, there are tears in Roland's eyes, and he tries to hide it behind anger, but they're still there. Roland looks at the hand that came so close to taking Connor's life. He wasn't able to go through with it, and he seems just as surprised as Connor. Consider yourself lucky, Roland says. Then he leaves without another word. Connor can't tell whether Roland's disappointed or relieved that he's not the killer he thought he was, but Connor suspects it's a little bit of both. Chapter 57, Lev. The tithes at Happy Jack are like first-class passengers on the Titanic. There's plush furniture throughout the tithing house. There's a theater, a pool, and the food is better than homemade. Sure, their fate's the same as the Terribles, but at least they're getting there in style. After dinner, Lev is alone in the tithing house workout room. He stands on a treadmill that isn't moving because he hasn't turned it on. On his feet are thickly padded running shoes. He wears a double pair of socks to cushion his feet even more. However, his feet are not his concern at the moment. It's his hands. He stands there, staring at his hands, lost in the prospect of them. Never before has he been so intrigued by the lines across his palms. Isn't one of them supposed to be the lifeline? Shouldn't the lifeline of a tithe divide out like the branches of a tree? Lev looks at the swirls of his fingerprints. What a nightmare of identification it must be when people get in Unwind's hands. What can a fingerprint mean when it's not necessarily yours? No one will be getting Lev's fingerprints. He knows that for a fact. There are tons of activities for the tithes, but unlike the Terribles, no one's forced to participate. Preparation for tithing is a month-long regimen of mental and physical assessments, even before one's tithing party. So all the hard work is done at home before they get here. True, this isn't the harvest campaign his parents had chosen, but he's a tithe. It's a lifetime pass that's good anywhere. Most of the other tithes in the rec room at this time of the evening or in any number of prayer groups. There are pastors of all faiths of the tithing house, ministers, priests, rabbis, and clerics, because the notion of giving the finest of the flock back to God is a tradition as old as religion itself. Lev attends as often as necessary, and in Bible study he says just enough of the right things so as to not look suspect. He also keeps his silence when Bible passages become shredded to justify unwinding, and kids start to see the face of God in the fragments. My uncle got the heart of a tithe, and now people say he can perform miracles. I know a woman who got a tithe's ear. She heard a baby crying a block away and rescued it from a fire. We are Holy Communion. We are manna from heaven. We are the peace of God in everyone. Amen. Lev recites the prayers, trying to let them transform him and lift him up the way they used to, but his heart has been hardened. He wishes it could be hard enough to be a diamond instead of crumbling jade. Maybe then he had chosen a different path. But for who he is now, and for what he feels and doesn't feel, this path is right. And if it's not right, well, he doesn't care enough to change it. The other tithes know Lev is different. They've never seen a fallen tithe before, much less one who, like the prodigal son, had renounced his sins and returned to the fold. But then tithes don't generally know many other tithes. Being surrounded by so many kids just like them feeds that sense of being a chosen group. Still, Lev is outside the circle. He turns the treadmill on, making sure his strides are steady and his footfalls are as gentle as can be. The treadmill is state-of-the-art. It has a screen with a programmable vista. You can jog through the woods or run the New York Marathon. You can even walk on water. Lev was prescribed extra exercise when he arrived a week ago. That first day, his blood test showed high triglyceride levels. He's sure that Mai's and Blaine's blood tests show the same problem as well. although the three of them were captured independently and arrived a few days apart from one another, so no connection among the three of them could be made. It either runs in your family or you've had a diet high in fats, the doctor had told him. He prescribed a low-fat diet during his stay at Happy Jack and suggested additional exercise. Lev knows there's another reason for the high triglyceride level. It's not actually triglycerides in his bloodstream at all, but a similar compound, one that's a little less stable. Another boy enters the workout room. He has fine hair so blonde it's practically white and eyes so green there must have been some genetic manipulation involved. Those eyes will go for a very high price. Hi, Lev. He gets on the treadmill next to Lev and begins running. What's up? Nothing, just running. Lev knows the kid didn't come here of his own accord. Tithes are never supposed to be left alone. He was sent here to be Lev's buddy. Candle lighting will be starting soon. Are you coming? Every evening, a candle is lit for each tithe being unwound the next day. The honored kid gives a speech and everyone applauds. Lev finds it disgusting. I'll be there, Lev tells the kid. Have you started working on your speech yet? He asks. I'm almost done with mine. Mine's still in bits and pieces, Lev says. The joke goes over the kid's head. Lev turns off the machine. This kid will not leave him alone as long as he's here. And Lev really doesn't want to talk to him about the glory of being a chosen one. He'd rather think about those who aren't chosen and are lucky enough to be far from harvest camp like Risa and Connor, who, to the best of his knowledge, are still in the sanctuary of the graveyard. It's a big comfort to know their lives will continue after he's gone. There's an old trash shed behind the dining room that is no longer in use. Lev found it last week and decided it was the perfect place for secret meetings. When he arrives that evening, Mai is pacing in the small space. She's getting more and more nervous each day. How long are we going to wait, she asks. Why are you in such a hurry, Lev asks. We'll wait till the time is right. Blaine pulls out 6 small paper packets from his sock, tears one open, and pulls out a little round Band-Aid. What's that for, Mai asks. For me to know and you to find out. You're so immature. Mai always has a short fuse, especially when it comes to Blaine, but tonight there seems to be more rumbling beneath the surface of her attitude. What's wrong, Mai? Lev asks. Mai takes a moment before answering. I saw this girl today playing piano on the chop shop roof. I know her from the graveyard, and she knows me. That's impossible. If she's from the graveyard, why would she be here? Asked Blaine. I know what I saw, and I think there are other kids here I know from the graveyard, too. What if they recognize us? Blaine and Mai look to Lev as if he can explain it. Actually, he can. They must be kids who were sent out on jobs and got caught, that's all. Mai relaxes. Yeah, that must be it. If they recognize us, says Blaine, we can say the same thing happened to us. There, says Lev, problem solved. Good, says Blaine. Now, back to business. So I'm thinking we go the day after tomorrow, on account of I'm scheduled for a game of football the day after that, and I don't think it'll go very well. Then he hands 2 of the little Band-Aids to Mai and 2 to Lev. What do I need Band-Aids for, Mai asks. I was told to give you these after we got here. Blaine dangles one from his fingers like a little flesh-colored leaf. They're not Band-Aids, he says. They're detonators. There never was a job on the Alaskan pipeline. After all, what Unwind would volunteer for such a job? The whole point was to make sure that no one but Lev, Mai, and Blaine volunteered. Their van had taken them from the graveyard to a rundown house in a rundown neighborhood where people who had been run down by life plotted unthinkable deeds. Lev was terrified of these people and yet felt a kinship with them. They understood the misery of being betrayed by life. They understood what it felt like to have less than nothing inside them. And when they told Lev how important he was in the scheme of things, Lev felt for the first time in a long time truly important. The word evil was never used by these people except to describe the evils of what the world had done to them. What they were asking Lev, Mai, and Blaine to do wasn't evil. No, not at all. It was an expression of all the things they felt inside. It was the spirit and the nature and the manifestation of all they had become. They weren't just messengers, they were the message. This is what they filled Lev's mind with, and it was no different than the deadly stuff they filled his blood with. It was twisted, it was wrong, and yet it suited Lev just fine. We have no cause but chaos, Cleaver, their recruiter, was always so fond of saying. What Cleaver never realized, even at the end of his life, is that chaos is as compelling a cause as any other. It can even become a religion to those unlucky enough to be baptized into it, those whose consolation can only be found in its foul waters. Lev does not know Cleaver's fate. He doesn't know or care that he himself is being used. All Lev knows is that someday soon the world will suffer a small part of the loss and the emptiness and the utter disillusionment he feels inside. And they will know it the moment he raises his hand in applause.